Hi. Hi. So you can hear me, yeah? Hello.
Can hear you, can hear you. Oh,
Okay. Okay, so let me open up your paper and let me find your paper because I was going through with the other students here. And let's see if I can find that. Where's your paper? Where's your paper? Where's your paper? And where's your paper? I'm looking for it. I don't see, it doesn't even come up. Let me see if I can find it like this. Jong Sung. Yeah, I think this is it. Okay, so let me screen share. And I think, is this your paper? This is your paper, right? That's it? That's your paper, yeah? You can hear me, can't you?
Oh shoot, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, that's my paper.
Okay, that's your paper? Yeah, okay. Okay, so let's save it again just in case we make some more changes here. And like this. And let me remind myself what I wrote here. You know, of course, your English is outstanding. I just want to also, you know, polish and refine, help you polish and refine your English. And I can't really tell you as a native speaker why something sounds better to me. I mean, I can tell you, but I can, but you know, I just, I learned from a conference I listened to Zoom a few months ago.
Yeah, it's all about connotations, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you know, they call it, in linguists call it ineffability. It just sounds right, and what sounds right, that be as a native speaker. So that's an interesting concept, ineffability. So you right here, yeah, and so also in terms of rhetorical writing, what Mrs. Hanlon taught me in 1979 when I was in high school in Louisville, Ohio. Mrs. Hanlon was this brutal but really good academic writing teacher in my high school who made my life miserable because she also taught at Kent State University. She taught writing to college students, so she knew what we needed to do. And she told me we should not use rhetorical questions in scholarly writing because when you use rhetorical questions, it just reminds the reader that of what the scholarly writer does not know. Like you're asking something that you don't have an answer. That's why they said whenever you use rhetorical questions, there should be kind of questions where you can ask the questions. You can immediately say like yes or no. You answer it yourself.
If I answer it immediately, then that'll be
yeah,
all right.
yes or no, and you know that's what they told me. Miss Polly Haddon and Mrs. Hanlon taught me.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, as long as mine doesn't sound too amateurish, then sounds good.
And because, like I said, your task is to always your task in all communication, including debates, or when you're talking to U.S. officers, or when you're talking to Korean students, or you're talking to whomever, is to persuade. And so there's certain ways you have to know your audience. And in scholarly writing, you know, you're making this grand truth claims, these truth claims. Now you might not persuade me, but you have to try. And what you want to do is you make a statement to them, you prove it, and including by citing evidence to support your claims, scholarly evidence to support your claims. So that's why we typically avoid rhetorical questions. So you right here, a populist championing traditional values when the most popular did not seem feasible. Well, it depends what you mean by populist. I mean, another student wrote in this class that Jimmy Carter came across as a populist. Is Bernie Sanders a pop? I don't know how much you pay attention to contemporary American politics, but populism. There used to be a phrase. I mean, in America, because of its founding and its rejection of big government and the association of socialism also with non-Anglo-Saxon people, that you can't say you're a socialist and expect to win elections if you're a politician in the US. But what we do have is a tradition of populism. And until Trump, populism was associated with left of center, but basically socialism, but we didn't call it socialism. It was called populism. And there is a tradition of populism, among farmers demanding state intervention to block exploitation by railroad companies 100 years ago or so on. So I think what you mean here is a conservative a reactionary populist.
Or maybe if I write down like maybe an extremist, maybe. Would that make sense?
No, I mean, how do you define extremist? I mean, the thing is, Trump won, and we're still trying to make sense of how he won. And keep in mind, he won just by getting what was a total of 70,000 votes more than Hillary Clinton in some critical states in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. He won, even though Hillary Clinton got almost 3 million total votes more than him. And so why did that happen? And, it's an ongoing question that we've tried to explore. And, I appreciate the students by highlighting that, claiming that, Hillary Clinton's negative image is overemphasized. That seems to be a theme in the class from the students this semester, that explanation, that's part of it, but that's only one. People typically say, for example, sorry, what were you saying?
Continue.
No. Like, for example, you mean when I still read the New York Times is kind of considered to have a left of center editorial orientation, even though it's really influential. And they're still kind of like trying to defend Hillary Clinton, because every once in a while they make a statement about, for example, how, Hillary Clinton was, they're really sensitive about, look, there are, and this is my influence. They don't come out and say this, but of course there's these traditional white patriarchal misogynistic stereotypes that women just are not the best managers, right? If you want to screw something up, put a woman in charge. And there was always that defensiveness that emerges, for example, I think in these newspapers. So like, for example, the point is made that Hillary Clinton she didn't go to Wisconsin once in a campaign when she was campaigning. I don't know if she went to Michigan, but she didn't go to Michigan or Wisconsin. I don't know if she went to Pennsylvania. She didn't go there. She didn't campaign there. Now, why? And, people make the argument, well, those are the so-called traditional blue belt states. Those states are where unions are most strong, trade unions are most strong, and they were going to vote for Democrats. And of course they didn't. They voted for Trump. And so the question is, why didn't Hillary Clinton go there? And of course, now the U.S. is in some kind of pre-crisis arrangement, that this is a big issue, because just because Trump lost doesn't mean these forces have been unleashed and they're still there. And the New York Times made a statement. They reported a couple months ago, she was going to go, I think they said, to Wisconsin, but then there was a massacre. A gunman went to a gay club in Florida, Pace Club, and killed 55 people. A Muslim militant killed 55 people with an AK-47 or some kind of, and she canceled her trip to go to Washington to Wisconsin because she thought it would be inappropriate to campaign immediately after this massacre in the U.S. Right? So there's still this kind of trying to figure out, how did this guy Trump win? And, and other students point out, well, the emails, it was the Russians. The Russians dumped the emails that they hacked from the Democratic National Committee, from Podesta's email account, and gave them to Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, and he posted them. And so that's a factor. And, but it's still a sensitive topic today because of the particularly the feminist movement and the reaction against the feminist movement. So, for example, since Trump won, he appointed 3 Supreme Court justices who are conservatives and have been checked to be selected specifically to overturn Roe versus Wade. And that debate, I think the arguments of the case were just finished this past week, and we'll get the results in June. But they're definitely going to weaken the right to access to abortion, if not overturn the entire thing, and let each state decide whether or not they want abortion to be legal. And again, that's because Trump won. And if you're a typical feminist, this is infuriating. I mean, that women can't, might not be able to get abortions, and so it's still a sensitive topic. How did this guy win? This openly rude, well,
I guess
he would deny he's a racist, right? But
Never
the way he acted, the way he talked, the way he was charged, the way he joked about assaulting women, and he still won.
Of course, there's always the minorities as well, calling other countries a shithole and stuff like that. There's also that.
I
I guess
mean,
there is like a need from like some sort of like machoism, right? There's some sort of like
to some
they feel
element,
like
I mean, some people, they found that
they're
appealing.
strong. Huh? Yeah,
I mean,
someone that's
from
determined.
the point of view, like for example, of nationalism, the people that support Trump, they don't just support him, they love him.
Yeah. I mean,
And
I worked alongside US soldiers, the GIs, and I know how much they love Trump.
oh yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I was
yeah.
a Katusa, so I know all about these GIs and their families. They're like
And you
zealots,
know,
really, aren't they?
and that intensity thing, that's important. You can
Very.
sort of say, well, let me calculate my economic interest. I'm a worker. I want to trade union. Okay, I support Joe Biden or I support Hillary Clinton because but that is important in politics, but so is emotion. And the people that support Trump, they love Trump, and so they're intense, they're motivated, and they tend to dominate or affect the social environment in the family, in the work. Like for example, me, I know people that love Trump, and I go home and I make sure I don't talk about politics because emotions will get hostile. And we got other issues to deal with. I mean, my parents just passed. I'm relying upon them, my family to take care of this. So, and that's because this isn't some kind of cold game. We're talking about people loving or hating Trump. And what are you willing to do if in terms of alienating those people? And so Trump, he's polarizing, but the people that love him tend to be white men.
Would you say that they love him as much as they love God then? God and Jesus.
As much as they love who?
You reckon they love Trump as much as they love God, Jesus and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, there's some ridiculous stuff posted on social media. I mean, anybody can post anything on social media, but there was those memes about Donald Trump being a crusader, Donald Trump doing God's will. Just memes about Jesus guiding Donald Trump's hands. There are those people, but those people were around before Trump became president. Yeah. And Trump was willing to do anything to appeal to them. Yeah. So he even said, "Oh, now I've accepted Christ into my." And he didn't give it, But he was the first. The fact that I think there are a lot of people like Donald Trump in the United States, but Donald Trump already had a high national profile because of decades of appealing as this image of a successful businessman, because America liked successful business people, like we talked about in class. Americans are suspicious about the state and the civil servants of the state because of their founding by Protestant, going way back to the Protestant founding by Protestant Congregationalists who rejected the state mandated religion of Britain or Germany or Italy. They wanted, and so and then Trump. But they think business people, those are the true Americans, not intellectuals, not professors, business people. We even have an expression in the US that those who can't be successful in society, those who can't do, they teach. They become college professors. Remember that we talked about in class, it's all expressed by that guy, Daniel Flynn. What is the problem with academics that they make their students read the Zinn book? These people are sick, from Flynn's point of view, right? And Trump played with that. And, he had a long history of, being covered by the tabloids in New York City, the biggest city in the United States. His father created a rental property empire in New York City that Trump inherited, Trump, typically he is known for making his national move. Back in the 1980s, there was a white jogger woman who was, I think, raped, and 4 or 5 black boys were charged and put on trial. And Donald Trump took out a full-page advertisement in American newspapers calling for these guys to be, I don't know, executed or punished, and people like that because of that that image of fear of black people raping white women, that goes way back, 120 years, 150 years. And then they found out that those boys were not the ones who did it. But he didn't, but he still made a national profile for this is like in 1985, 86. And so he was able, I think they love him, not only because he talks like them, but because he showed people like them can become president of the United States. Talks like them, who has the same views as them, has the same doubts, and who's rich, and who's successful, supposedly, and who's rich, and could win in elections. And I mean, finally, somebody who looks like them, won. And there's nothing better than winning if you want to be popular. Right? And so when people look back in the history of the Trump phenomenon, all of that has to be in there. And this resentment. The Democratic Party, for example, it's very difficult more difficult for the Democratic Party to do something because it has all of these different groups within it, because the US developed a two-party system because it comes down to who can control the executive branch. And that's one person, a president, controls the entire third branch of the US government. And it's not like in Germany or even in South Korea, where you also have a parliament. We have to create a proportional representation. We have to form a coalition of parties to control the executive, like in Germany in particular, right? Or in Italy. In the US, it's one person. And so if there's this incentives to create two parties, only two parties, because if you got to win you have to win one person election to get control of the government. And so the point is that these Republican and Democratic parties are very broad, but the Democratic Party is much more broad. It's much more of a big tent. It's got conservative Democrats to radical socialists to Black Lives Matter activists to LGBTQ people, all in the coalition to win control of the presidency. So it's much more difficult for them to do things and get things organized, because the Republican Party, beginning way back with Nixon, has become primarily the party of white, conservative, evangelical people in America. So it's much more cohesive, and that's still the biggest group, even though even white, the proportion of population that defines itself as white is declining, because although these categories change as well, but like I wouldn't call Cuban Americans Hispanics. They're not. They're as conservative as anybody else. But they're not like Mexican Americans. But so I'd call Cuban Americans white. They're definitely white, like Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio.
Yeah, their birth doesn't get put the question in it.
Yeah, and and the resentment about, like we talked about in a society where there's a core group, and the tendency within the core group, whether it be the WASPs, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant WASP in America, or the Germans in Germany, or the Italians in Italy, or the Koreans in Korea, they'll tend to assume that the state represents them, and they look and act a certain way, but minorities, they don't look and act like them, and so they mock Indians and Africans, and they get resentful about Jews and all of these other people that are not your stereotype of what a traditional American's supposed to be: white, Christian, conservative, but there's transgender people who want their rights and want equal gay marriage. This infuriates a powerful big minority, but a big minority of the population, and Trump appealed to them, and he got them excited because he showed that, or made them believe that they're not some relic of the past. Because
it's not like a real new thing to occur. There's always people that want to keep the status quo, right? And this is probably like another one of those cases in which we're fighting for what they believe is normal, whatever that means.
Yeah, I have to go back and check historically, typically, the
It's for the civil rights
authorities,
movement, right?
huh?
It goes for the civil rights movement, gay pride,
Yeah,
stuff like that.
I mean, but it's hard to find, Americans would say that, for example, Black people should not have the, should be segregated from white people. They're not going to come out and admit that, but they're going to, but what they resent is, as they try to explain, for example, basically what globalization.
Yeah.
People look for scapegoats. That's what I'm trying to say. The world has changed. America's becoming more integrated in the world economy. And of course, the best example of globalization is South Korea, right? I mean, what do you have to do in South Korea to be successful? 85% of people graduate from high school, I was told, in South Korea go to college. In the US, it's like 40 or 50%, not 85. All Koreans have to start studying English when they're 7. The Americans still don't require everybody's got to study a foreign language. Jobs where you could get paid a decent wage and buy a house and live sort of like everybody else or most people, those jobs are gone, right? If you want to live a lifestyle that looks like something what you see on TV, you got to have a college degree. Not only that, you should speak another language well. And so these people who don't meet those criteria, they look for explanations. What's going on? Why? Who's to blame? It's the big state serving the interests and taxing the white people and taxing the hardworking Americans to serve the interests of single mothers having babies outside of wedlock, and Black people who want affirmative action and who want national health care and going to take away my wonderful private health care insurance from my employer so that we can give it to, you tax it and take more money to give to Black and brown and the Chinese and the immigrants coming in taking our job. I mean, you look for simplistic, stupid answers, but that's what human beings do. They look for easy, emotionally satisfying, comprehensible answers. And if you're a politician, you appeal to that. You can appeal to that because you want people to vote for you. And you want people to vote for you, so you have to make them like you. And that means you have to appeal to emotions. I mean, there's all sorts of evidence that America needs those immigrants, right? I mean, or Europe needs, it's not just America, they need these immigrants, right? It's like in Korea. Koreans will not, generally will not work in agriculture anymore. I mean, that's just dropping more and more. And more. So you need to bring in immigrants because you got that people, Koreans won't do difficult, dirty, and dangerous work. Same is true in America. You can pay Americans $15, $20 an hour, and they're not going to pick tomatoes because it's boring and hard. So you got to bring in Mexicans to do it because it's seasonal. It's a seasonal job, and they come in and they do it and they go back home, but they don't want to hear this, because they're afraid. And Trump provides, politicians provide simplistic answers to win elections, right? To get people excited about voting. So that's why this guy Trump, because the very fact that he won appears to validate them that, you know what, they're not simplistic morons, because if they were simplistic morons, their guy would not have become president of the United States. And so he's almost like a political messiah in that sense, right?
But compare it back to the day, like I guess it was really interesting when you said that Jimmy Carter could be looked at as a populist. Like back then, there was a need for a good guy president, and then he appealed to that popular belief. But now there's like a need for like a strong, determined, like a macho kind of person, and that would be Trump, right? In a way.
Well, we have to be careful because, like, for example, he did lose to Joe Biden. Now he only lost again by, I think it might again be like 70,000 votes. He got 7 million more votes than Trump. But again, it was certain states that he barely won: Georgia, Arizona, and Pennsylvania, maybe.
Yeah.
And does Joe Biden come across as macho? No, Trump is all about macho, but Trump lost because there's still look, the election is determined by 10% of the population. 40% of the population will almost always only vote Republican, or 45%. 45% will almost always vote Democrat. There's this 10% that shifts. And there was a group of people that were willing to give Trump the benefit of the doubt, because of, the Hillary Clinton's emails and the fact that she didn't show up in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania to show that she's going to fight for white working class people, and that Biden did. And of course, also the fact that Trump appeared to be incompetent in dealing with the pandemic. But again, it was close. I mean, again, Biden got 7 million more votes, but I think it was a total of, what did I read a couple of days ago? Again, like 70 or maybe some tens of thousands of votes. If they had gone the other way, there would have been a tie in the electoral college, equally balanced. Nobody would have gotten 270 votes. And then it would have been thrown into the House of Representatives to vote and to determine who would be the president in a system that's not been used since the 1830s. That was done one time, I think, when Andrew Jackson lost to John Quincy Adams, that the Constitution says that if nobody gets a majority of the electoral college votes, then it goes into the House. And each state gets one vote in the House. So the delegations from Ohio, Pennsylvania, California, they get together as California and they decide who they're going to support for president. And they get one vote, one for California, one for Rhode Island, one for Montana. And since the Republicans dominate those states, they would have, Trump would have won. So rules are important. Obviously, institutional rules are important. These old rules that are in the Constitution that have not been changed or been modified to some extent, but not enough. We still have this electoral college, but people talk about, should we get rid of this and just have a direct election? And it never goes anywhere. I mean, people talking about this since 2000 when Al Gore lost to George Bush, even though Al Gore got more votes than George Bush, and George Bush won because he got 500 votes more than Al Gore in Florida. That's why he spread 500 votes. And they talked about it and nothing happened. And then nothing's going to happen again until something horrible happens, like something comparable to, Civil War. So I don't know. So America's in a crisis stage. Just because Trump lost doesn't mean that these forces are going to be put back in their bottle. But we hope with those 10% of the people that swing in elections, that they understand what you and I are talking about, and they're not going to support somebody. But there are. I mean, it happened in Virginia. There was a guy that won and defeated Terry McAuliffe to become the Republican governor of Virginia because he talked a bit like Trump, but kept Trump away. He came across as a pragmatic business person, but still talked about Trumpy ways. He showed the Republicans how to exploit the Trump phenomenon, but not be too much tarnished by it, because Virginia is a Democratic state, and they just elected a Republican governor a month ago. So, and it might not be that hard to do, given the fact, again, because of this electoral college system, right? So, time's almost up. Do you have any questions? Yeah, something I forgot to mention here. In scholarly writing, don't use slang. Right. So you can use slang when you're talking to me and you're talking to American soldiers, but when you're writing scholarly, don't say "ate it up," because "ate it up" that's a slang term, right? Yeah. And in scholarly writing, you say Trump promises and conservatives responded enthusiastically. That's okay. That's how you should say it in terms of scholarese. Okay. Okay.
That sounds much more professional. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, people are still trying to, and it's something about political science as a field. Political science as a field's got problems because the pollsters, they thought. I mean, 2 months before the 2016 elections, people were talking about Hillary Clinton's going to blow Trump away. She's going to win by such a big margin, and it's going to be the biggest blowout since 1964 against Barry Goldwater by Lyndon Johnson. And she was supposed to win, and then she lost. And people do public opinion polling said, well, we weren't too far off because she still got almost 3% more votes, and that's but then we'll fix it for 2020. And they almost blew it again. I mean, you think that Trump is going to lose because of the pandemic and because Black Lives Matter, and then he almost pulled it off because of the rules. And I just don't know how political science, but they need to talk about this emotion issue. And understand also the people themselves often don't know what they're going to do. They might just consciously lie to me if I ask them, or if you ask them, how are you going to vote in the next election? But then, or they might lie to themselves, and they might not know what they're going to do until they go in that voting booth and vote. But anyway, so let me send this to you because I did make that one change. And so are you continuing to work at the base?
Oh, no. That's just, my mandatory duties.
Uh-huh.
So now I'm all done. I'm a civilian now.
Uh-huh.
No longer a sergeant.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm all clean now.
Yeah. Do you still have to do your reserve training?
Oh yeah, I got probably like 3-ish years left, maybe.
Uh-huh.
2 years.
Okay.
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 It's all good. It's all good.
Uh-huh.
Kind of missed the times though. When you're just stupid and just messing around with GIs. That was good.
Well, I mean, you could join the ROTC program and become an officer,
I'm good.
Yeah.
I like freedom. I'm not fighting for freedom. All about this.
Okay. I'll send you the link to this recording, okay?
Sounds good.
All right. Talk to you later.
Yes, bye-bye.